Local issues, local voices. Cavan Community Radio, 101.6 FM.
Good afternoon and welcome to Greenfingers, gardening programme for all gardeners in Cavan and the surrounding areas. On this week's programme I'm speaking to Wayne Frankham. Wayne is from Knockvicar Organic Garden near Boyle in County Roscommon, and we're here today to talk about the Comfrey plant. First of all, Wayne, perhaps you'd like to tell us what Comfrey is.
Hello Declan, thank you for your invitation to the show. Comfrey. Visitors to our garden will find this a very familiar sight. Also known as knitbone or boneset, it's a member of the borage or Boraginaceae family. The type I'm referring to today is Russian comfrey, and between its varieties it grows between 2 and 4 foot tall. It has long, deep-veined, broad and pointed green leaves with bristly hairs on the leaf and stem, and clusters of mauve, bell-like flowers from May through September. Come winter, the leaves are knocked down by frosts, just like this wilted leaf I'm showing you here. But the plant comes back with a vengeance in the spring, generally before even grass starts growing. And
perhaps, Wayne, you'd like to tell us why should we grow comfrey in our garden?
It's recognised as a fodder crop for bees, chickens and pigs. It grows very easily, makes a decent shelter belt for tender plants. It's a barrier against weeds for the veggie patch, and a great mulch. It mines for minerals, and this is what helps to make it a fantastic fertiliser.
And presumably, Wayne, that means fertilising without chemicals.
Exactly. As we face the very real situation of peak oil, alternatives are essential. What could be more ideal than growing your own fertility exactly where you need to use it? The major nutrients of nitrogen, potassium and phosphorus can be found in greater abundance in the wilted leaves of comfrey than in farmyard manure. I'll show you here this table of nutritional analysis where potash can be provided at over 3 times the potency of farmyard manure. The plant has a deep growing taproot that can go down several feet. The root draws up nutrients from the subsoil, especially the potassium. And because potassium is effectively mined from deep down, an otherwise inaccessible source, the plant provides a sustainable, free nutrient input that us organic gardeners love.
So there's research to back up the use of comfrey. Would you tell us more about how we started using comfrey in the garden?
That's a great question. For hundreds of years, comfrey has been recognised for its potency, be it in the garden as manure, folklore for magic, medically for humans and animals. The botanical name symphytum is from the Greek symphio, which is to unite, as in knitbone. As a wound healer, the components are recognised for their cell regeneration, which aids the healing process. It contains calcium. It's been widely used as animal feed. It's rich in vitamins A and C. The very young tender leaves can be eaten raw and chopped in small salads or cooked, or chopped small in salads, or cooked in fritters. But I'd like to digress a little further. In the 19th century, Henry Doubleday was a Quaker and smallholder, running a small factory which made gum for stamps. Looking for other sources of gum, he sought a version of Russian comfrey called Symphytum asperum, which was said to be especially mucilaginous, or shall we say sticky. Instead he found Symphytum uplandicum, first observed in upland Sweden. Basically, he recognised its potential as a prolific source of protein which he felt could save the world, and devoted the last 30 years of his life, until 1875, to researching, developing and promoting its use. Moving on to the 1950s, Lawrence Hills was a freelance journalist and horticulturalist with a keen interest in organics. While researching his book with the highly descriptive title Russian Comfrey, 100 tons an acre of stock feed or compost for farm, garden or smallholding, he discovered the work of Henry Doubleday, took up the baton of research and development, and created what became Garden Organic, a charity for organic growing with over 40,000 supporters, which reaches more than 3 million beneficiaries around the world through expert advice and information. He bred a specific cultivar of Russian comfrey, being Symphytum ex Uplandicum, which took the name Bocking 14, a robust herbaceous perennial plant that will keep growing and supplying you with fertilizer for up to 20 years. It produces a deep taproot, reaching as far as 10 feet underground. The large, hairy leaves grow in a clump, which give rise to thin flowers between May and August. The leaves die back in the winter, and nutrients are stored in the roots for next year's growth. Its flowers are sterile, so won't spread like the rampant weed that others can become.
So you mentioned the blocking 14 there. Should we be using blocking 14 instead of the Russian comfrey?
Well, at our organic garden, we've long been using the standard Russian comfrey. One of the particular advantages of Bocking 14, Bocking refers to the name of the ground where the research was done on these plants and where the name came from, so Bocking 14. The advantage is the sterility, but in a working garden, you would be in the habit of harvesting the leaves generally before the plant goes to flower, so spreading by seed needn't be an issue. The Bocking 14 variant is recognized for its superior vitamins and mineral content, but must be cultivated by root division. That is simply done once sourced by taking a spade, cutting straight through the root and planting that root. As little as an inch will generally take. Use potting compost and put it in a cold frame, and that will help you even more. Until you find a source, be it from a good friend or perhaps the organic catalogue or the organic centre, then the standard Russian comfrey is still extremely good.
And how can gardeners use it in the garden?
Well, you'll get 3 or 4 harvests a year per plant. Cut the leaves about 6 inches from the base. The hairs can be an irritant, so it's best to wear gloves. To use the leaves directly, they should be wilted so that they themselves don't take root. You can then just lay them on top of each other, piling them an inch or 2 deep under your potatoes instead of manure. Peas and beans like that too. Or you can apply them as a feeding mulch around your veg, particularly tomatoes, as well as fruit shrubs and trees. Probably the most popular use in the garden is as a liquid feed. Chop the leaves into a barrel using shears, cover it up with water, top it up with water, cover it well with something solid like a lid, and you'll have a feed within 4 weeks. The fruiting plants like tomatoes and cucumbers certainly benefit, but as with any fertilizer, it should be used sparingly. It is highly potent and must be luted 1 to 10.
That is liquid feed or compost tea has an equally potent odour. Is that the only way that you can use the comfrey?
Yep, the smell. It certainly has that smell, just like nettle tea, and some say that smell is like an open sewer. The reason for the smell, which I shall dwell on briefly, is that the leaves concentrate the potassium with the nitrogen while being low in their fibre. A carbon to nitrogen ratio lower than garden compost means the surplus nitrogen is released as leaves rapidly decompose. This makes the nutritious black liquid gardener's gold. It's the rapid breakdown of leaf protein, which is a putrefaction. That's where the smell comes from. However, you can make a concentrate with leaves alone in a sealed container and keep it sealed for up to a year. Use that at 1 to 20. The smell will be gone, so plan ahead. The comfrey is also a great compost activator and a valuable addition in bulk to the heap as an excellent micronutrient accumulator. The leaves are full of nitrogen, silica, calcium, potassium, iron and magnesium, so it's a complete fertilizer in a plant. So yes, you can use it as a liquid, you can use it as a mulch, you can use it directly, effectively as a manure. It has other uses too.
Does it have any special requirements when you're growing in the garden?
The comfrey is not a fussy plant. Being deep-rooted and often found in the wild at riversides, it will tolerate any site except shallow or dry chalky soil. I've tried growing it in a large container in the tunnel to have it readily available for the crops. Maybe being a bit lazy, but any bit of energy used is energy wasted, isn't it? So anyway, it gets thirsty in a container, and it won't be able to access the valuable nutrients. With the way it breaks up the heavy clay at home in Leitrim and also thrives in our deep peaty organic soil at Knockvicar, it's a bit of a waste of time to grow it in containers, given that it grows so easily outdoors. So another comfrey variant, Symphytum officinale, is a native woodland plant which grows best in moist soil. Bearing that in mind, Russian comfrey is also happy in both moist and partially shaded areas. You're just replicating its natural environment, but it will tolerate the majority of growing conditions. If you're feeling especially kind, and particularly if you've invested in the valuable Bocking 14, then you should first remove the competing perennial weeds. Plant them 2 to 3 feet apart. On poor soils, planting more of them 1 or 2 feet apart. Plant your root cuttings 2 inches deep, with the crown just below the surface. Keep the young plants well watered and weed free. Keep your established beds mulched to conserve the moisture. You will need to supply nitrogen then to make your plants grow well. If you apply an annual mulch of rotted manure in April and then further top dressing, you could grow the plants around your manure heap or compost site. The established plants can tolerate fresh manures, even poultry manure. A well-grown plant can eventually produce 4 or 5 pounds, say 2 or 3 kilos almost of leaves per cut, and 4 or 8 plants would be adequate for a small to medium-sized garden, say about 15 by 30 meters. You should let the plant build up its size in the first year. After the spring planting, there's no cutting except for one to prevent the flowering in June. Early autumn planting allows the plant to establish before they become dormant over December and January. Cutting starts with plants about 2 foot high and before the flower stems produce their flowers. With about 5 or 6 weeks for regrowth, you can get possibly 4 cuts a year. In autumn, the plant recovers nutrients for storage in roots over the winter, so no cutting should be done after September.
That's very interesting, Wayne. It's a plant that I didn't know much of until recently. I was involved with an organic garden project, and someone introduced that to the garden. To me, it seemed like a wonderful plant, and it has been very useful to us in the garden. We do have other sources of fertility in the garden, but I see the comfrey as being a wonder drug, really. Again, thanks very much, Wayne, and the best of luck in your gardening project in Knockvicar. Again, many thanks there to Wayne for that very informative talk about comfrey. I suppose the great challenge is for gardeners is that fertility is always going to be a problem, particularly in an organic system. Other sources of fertility are the waste from the garden should be composted, gather in leaves, and they can be composted. It does take them quite a while to break down, but they do make wonderful compost. Comfrey plants can be sourced from any of the good organic centres. That's all from the gardening programme for this week, so for now, good gardening.